long gunfight with authorities, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid were believed to have been fatally shot. But when authorities pieced together the truth of their demise, it was utterly disturbing. The Sundance Kid is synonymous with the Old West, a gunslinger plucked straight from a spaghetti western. His life with Butch Cassidy's Wild Bunch was one of daring robberies, dynamic gunfights, and thrilling escapes, but his fast living would eventually catch up to him, though not until he was halfway around the world. The Sundance Kid was born as Harry Alonzo Longaba in 1867, though he was a long way from where he would earn his nickname. When he was just 15, Longaba's cousin George decided to up and head west, as many Americans were doing during the nation's 19th century expansion. The young man decided to join his cousin to help him set up his homestead near Cortez, Colorado. The two traveled the long, arduous journey by covered wagon. While working on the ranch, Longaba would develop skills befitting his eventual Old West outlaw role. He learned the tricks of the equestrian trade, gaining proficiency in horse buying and horse breeding, but the kid had an independent streak that he just couldn't suppress. The winter of 1886 and 87 were infamously harsh, proving especially difficult on the cattle industry in the West. Such was the effect that it led to an entire reorganization of ranching, ending the open-range era. Times started to get more desperate for the young rancher. Having himself adrift once again, Longaba made his way to the Black Hills to find work, but was unsuccessful. Left with little choice, he turned back towards Montana. By 1887, he had made it as far as Sundance, Wyoming, where the desperate young prospector robbed a firearm, horse, and saddle from a cowboy. Longaba had gotten a taste of the outlaw life, and there was no turning back. New to the game, Longaba's first stint as an outlaw did not last long. Authorities quickly detained the young bandit in Miles City, Montana. There, a judge sentenced him to 18 months' imprisonment. But rather than serve as a deterrence, this internment solidified the young outlaw's new identity. Named for the town in which he committed his first known offense, and the fact that he was only 15 when he left home. He may have entered that jailhouse as Longaba, but it was the Sundance Kid that emerged. Now a free man, his first move was, well, anticlimactic. The Sundance Kid did not immediately return to a life of misdeeds. He decided first to seek opportunity in the Great White North, and by 1891 found himself working as a ranch hand at the Bar-U Ranch, one of the largest commercial ranches in the Northwest Territories of Canada. The kid's adopted country seemed to treat him much better than his native America, or so he thought. The Sundance Kid continued to find success in Canada. Heading west, he eventually became joint owner of a saloon in Calgary, crossing off another square on his Old West bingo card. However, his outlaw nature soon got the better of him. Evidently, the Sundance Kid had a hot temper, and it didn't take long before he got into a quarrel with his saloon business partner. There is little information about the nature of the dispute, but it was apparently bad enough for the kid not only to give up his stake in the saloon, but to leave the country entirely. He turned his sights on an old contact. Bitter about his misfortune in Canada, the Sundance Kid headed back to the good old U.S., where he resumed his employment at the Ambaran Ranch in Montana. He would return north on occasion, however, as his duties now included rustling cattle and horses across Montana and the bordering regions of Canada. It seemed that the kid was not entirely satisfied with his apparent step back, however. Eventually, the Sundance Kid grew tired of ranch life, because it seems he took up a life of lawlessness shortly after returning to the U.S. In particular, the outlaw was a suspect in two major operations, a train heist in 1892 and a bank heist in 1897. Whether he was actually involved in these transgressions has never been confirmed, but one thing is certain: he had fallen in with the wrong crowd. During this time, the Sundance Kid became associated with an infamous group of criminals, headed by well-known outlaw Robert Leroy Parker, better known as Butch Cassidy. The gang known as the Wild Bunch gained notoriety for an unstoppable series of robberies across the Old West. The Kid seems to have fit in quite well. Before the Sundance Kid's entry into the gang, the Wild Bunch's most famous gunslinger was a man named Kid Curry, who was infamously responsible for several enemy fatalities during the gang's exploits. But now there was literally a new kid in town. With his years of ranch work, the Sundance Kid had become a dab hand with a firearm. Reportedly, one of the fastest draws in the West, and with accuracy to boot, he gained a reputation as a skilled gunfighter. His talent left others in the dust. The Sundance Kid found himself involved in several thrilling gunfights with the Wild Bunch over the next few years, and his skill was on full display. One incident involved the gang defending their hideout from Le Mans, who had trailed another gang to the Wild Bunch's hole-in-the-wall hideout in Wyoming. A massive gunfight broke out in which the Sundance Kid allegedly wounded 2 officers. This event put a price on his head. The Wild Bunch decided it best to split up for now, and the 2 gunslinging kids, Sundance and Curry, moved to a new hideout in the mountains near Casey, Wyoming. This was a much safer spot to lay low because, due to the high ground of the hideout, the kids had a view in all directions of the surrounding territory. Lawmen didn't dare approach them for fear of getting sniped. By now, the Wild Bunch had cemented their place in history. The Wild Bunch is the most triumphant robbing gang of all time, holding the Old West record for longest stirring of successful train and bank robberies in American history. The Sundance Kid played no small part in that success, and the state had to meet that success with equal force. With the long arm of the federal government extending into the West, the authorities had to do something about the outlaw problem. They turned to the notorious Pinkerton Detective Agency, hiring their agents to pursue outlaws like the Sundance Kid for lucrative rewards. By the turn of the century, the Wild Bunch were beginning to feel the squeeze. The rapidly industrialized, federalizing country meant that Old West outlaws were becoming a thing of the past. With countless law enforcement agencies in pursuit of the gang, it began to fall apart, with members scattering in their separate ways across the land. But the Sundance Kid stuck with his leader. Together with Wild Bunch leader Butch Cassidy, the Sundance Kid set his sights on his next destination. The 2 outlaws decided to head to the last place the law would think to look, the belly of the developed beast, New York City. It was only a pit stop hour. Along with his fearless leader, the Sundance Kid also had his romantic companion at a place in tow. The trio did not stay in NYC for long. On February 20th, 1901, they set aboard the British steamer Herminius. The Kid's lady friend provided good cover for Cassidy, the most well-known of the bunch, who posed as Ed's fake brother James Ryan. The trio wanted to get as far from the U.S. as possible. With the level of heat on the Wild Bunch members, Cassidy and the Sundance Kid made sure they settled somewhere. Even the ever-resourceful Pinkerton's eye could not find them, so they headed as far south as they could, eventually landing in Argentina. There, they took on a huge new endeavor. The Sundance Kid was good at 2 things, outlawing and ranching. Since the former was no longer an option, the exiled trio purchased a 15,000-acre ranch on the east bank of the Rio Blanco near Cholila, Argentina. With stunning views of the Andes Mountains, from their 4-room log cabin, they set to work making their living, and it was bigger than anyone imagined. A letter written by Butch Cassidy to a friend in Utah, dated August 10, 1902, shows just how well the Sundance Kid and his companions did down south. Describing in the letter his little family of 3, Cassidy went on to claim that the outlaws possessed a whopping 300 cattle, 1,500 sheep, and 28 horses. But despite their vast resources, old habits die hard. On February 14, 1905, a bank in Rio Gallego, 700 miles south of Cholila, was held up by 2 English-speaking robbers. After acquiring a substantial sum of money, the 2 gunmen fled north across the Patagonian grasslands. The pair is widely assumed to be Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. It appears the boys were back in the game, and their behavior following the incident lends further credence to the theory. Whether or not Cassidy and the Kid committed the heist, the rumors alone were enough to spark paranoia in the outlaws. Fearing that law enforcement had gotten word of their location, they sold their ranch on May 1, 1905, and quickly fled. Turns out, they had gotten out of town just in time. Turns out the outlaws' paranoia was not unfounded. The Pinkerton agency had indeed discovered their location and had known for some time. They sent Agent Frank Dima down to Argentina to make an arrest. However, by a stroke of sheer luck, a hard snowy winter hit the Patagonia region, which prevented Daimio from traveling to the Kid's remote ranch. The Sundance Kid had a head start, but nevertheless, he was on the run again. The law hot on their trail, the Sundance Kid and his companions fled north, rehashing their initial escape plan. The trio once again boarded a steamer, and the Kid eventually ended up in Bolivia. After another spree of robberies in towns surrounding the Andes Mountains, Etta Place decided she was tired of life on the run. After some persuading, the Sundance Kid agreed to take his bow back to the United States and traveled with her back to San Francisco on June 30, 1906. He was only around the U.S. long enough to evade capture, but Place may have had an influence on him. While the Sundance Kid was away, Butch Cassidy adopted the alias James Santiago Maxwell. Finding himself alone and with no partner with whom to rob banks, he decided to go legit and got honest work at the Concordia tin mine in the central Bolivian Andes. Upon the Sundance Kid's return to South America, he joined his old partner, and the outlaws became miners. But it seems like the pair were a bad influence on each other. He can't teach an old dog new tricks, and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid once again grew tired of honest work. On November 3, 1908, a courier carrying the payroll for the RMIO silver mine was held up by two masked American bandits, widely assumed to be Cassidy and the Kid. But the boys had gotten sloppy in their old age. 3 days later, witnesses spotted Cassidy and the Sundance Kid in San Vicente. Holed up in a small boarding house, a fellow lodger, Bonifacio Casasola got suspicious when he noticed that his housemates had a mule on tow with the branding of the RMIO mine. Word of the heist that reached San Vicente and Casasola put two and two together. For exclusive perks like early access to new videos, priority replies to your comments, and to have your say on future content, consider becoming a Factornate member. On top of that, your support helps keep the channel going. Click the link in the description for more details. Casasola quickly notified the local telegraph officer of the presence of the two outlaws, who in turn notified a nearby cavalry regiment station. Soldiers were dispatched, and in tandem with local authorities, the officials closed in on Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. On the evening of November 6, 1908, the Sundance Kid's lodging house found itself surrounded by soldiers and lawmen, fully intent on arresting the two outlaws. But the last remaining Wild Bunch members were not going down without a fight. They opened fire on the approaching authorities, kicking off a gunfight that would end up lasting several hours into the night. The next morning, authorities entered the boarding house, where they found the bodies of the two men. The local police report later determined what happened. From the position of the bodies, it appears as though the Sundance Kid had been fatally wounded and, as a mercy, Butch Cassidy had put him out of his misery before taking his own life. It was a fitting end for the Wild Bunch outlaws, even if the authorities didn't quite know who they were dealing with. Although the Bellevine authorities identified the men as the same ones who had robbed the Aramayo payroll transport, they had no idea that the two outlaws were actually Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid of the Wild Bunch infamy. They buried the two bandits unceremoniously in a local cemetery in San Vicente. The Sundance Kid had finally met his demise. Or had he? Later attempts to find the bodies of the two men proved unsuccessful. leading to rumors that the Sundance Kid may have actually survived the encounter and fled back to the United States. Allegedly, he had taken on the name William Henry Long and settled in Utah. We may never know what really happened to the Sundance Kid, which only adds to his incredible legend. If you enjoyed this fact and 8 video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more incredible stories. Want to say in who we cover next? Join our membership program through the link in the description for exclusive perks. Your support means everything to us. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.